And
welcome everybody.
Yeah.
We are the first thing I'm supposed to ask about if anybody wants to record this meeting over and above the recording that will happen anyway as a result of it being a Zoom meeting. If anybody wants to record additionally, can they say or wave? Fine, good. And that means we can move to, hang on, I've got my agenda on the screen and it's hiding from me now. Sorry.
It's public question time, Pat. And I
yes,
think
but
Judith Patrick would like to speak.
Yeah. I was going to suggest, Liz and I talked about this, that what we might sensibly do is take all but Honley Library now and talk about that, and then ask, if the Honley Library people aren't in a screaming hurry, ask them to stay and join in the discussion when we get to it on the agenda, rather than listening to them then going on. Is anybody unhappy with that? Are you happy with us to do that?
Yes, I'm fine. Are you, Carrie?
I'm absolutely fine, but I can't see you, Jenny.
Well, I don't know why.
She's disappeared.
There's just a box where you should be.
Oh, I don't know why. Can you see me now?
That's fine. I can.
Right.
No,
Oh, yes,
I can hear you.
I can see a book or something, but I can't see you. Anyway, as you can hear us, we'll carry on.
But
So,
I'm here.
just before we do the meeting, no, we'll do. So, who wants to speak first? Is it home?
Can I speak first, please? Because I'm looking on. We are doing finance and management, aren't we?
No, we're cast.
No.
Oh, sorry, we are. Do beg your pardon there. I'm miles adrift here. Just a minute.
So, are there any apologies for absence, Liz?
No, but I noticed that Doug's isn't here, and he's the only person that's missing.
Okay.
He was here briefly.
Oh, was he?
Yes, he's disappeared again.
Yeah, he appeared and he disappeared, so I assume it's a connection problem.
Oh, I wonder if let me check out whether it's me.
So, the first thing is to invite the members of the public, other than the Honley Library people, to speak if they would. Who wants to go first? Judith, do you want to go? You're mute. You're not now.
I'm not now. Thank you, Chair. Only because I'm very limited on time. Unfortunately, I only agreed with the clerk that I'd join at about 4 o'clock this afternoon.
Oh, right.
And I need to be down at the hall for past for a class. So I've got very limited time, I'm afraid. Can I ask, have councillors seen the report that the Civic Hall has submitted to the meeting? Brilliant, thank you. I don't intend to go through it in any detail whatsoever. Liz asked me to join in case you had specific questions about ongoing works we have at the Civic Hall. As you know, you've already supported us with the works to the toilets, which are due to start in the new year. But I have listed in the report a number of ongoing, and truth to be told, the hall will always have ongoing works anyway because of its age and its condition. But I just gave you a bit of a shopping list of the works that are short to medium term, basically, that are coming up.
Thank you, Judith. I understand. Well, has anybody got any questions to Judith?
What the heat on? Where's it going?
No, I'm all right, thank you.
From you have.
Yeah, I've read the report, and the hall looks to be doing okay financially at the moment. Just checking that everything is still okay, and that's the case. And obviously, we are here to support you as the council, and we don't want you to fail. We want you to succeed. And obviously, the lack of bookings is going to affect you. But just to say, we are here for you and to help you and support you if you need that. I think.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah.
I mean, on general running costs, we are covering costs with a number of grants that we were lucky enough to get for COVID emergencies. The surplus that we would normally be generating from bigger events is what we're missing. But that's an unknown anyway, because it tends to be bar sales that generate those surpluses for us.
Any other, Rachel?
Yeah, it's just a quick question. I think it's a really useful report, so thanks for that. It's just in the future plans, are we talking sort of the next budget year, you think you may be in a position to come to us with any of those capital grants if you weren't successful with other grant applications, or is it likely that you might come to us in this financial year?
I think there's a bit of a split there, to be honest. So things like the works that fit in with the toilet scheme, so the redecoration of the foyer, the toilet corridor itself, and probably the external fire doors are things that we would want to do in this financial year. The flat roof repairs are already commissioned to be done, they're tendered and ready to go. So there's some works that will be this financial year, some that will be next.
And have you got funding in place for any of those with, say, the flat roof, or are you likely to be coming to us as a parish council later this year? I only ask because we're sort of, you know, later in the meeting we'll be discussing our budget for this year and obviously for next year, so it's useful to get an idea of the spread, that's all.
The flat roofs are covered, so the £3,000 there is covered by reserves. The other works, the redecorating of foyer and corridor and external doors, are not funded at present. In fact, the 2 redecorating jobs aren't even costed yet. They'll be costed as part of the tender exercise for the toilets. So possibly, if there were funds available from the parish council, is probably the easiest and most exact answer I can give to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I gather also that what you would like from it is more of an input into the trustees and some ideas and a kind of bit more involvement there.
There are 2 spaces on the trustee board for members of the parish council or members nominated by the parish council, so they don't necessarily need to be parish councillors. I am not 100% sure what the outcome of assignment of parish councillors nominated to the committee is at the moment, but there is only the one place, and we'd like to make that a more two-way collaborative process is probably the best way of putting it. And we're very grateful for Councillor Hogley saying that she'd be involved in the tender process when we get to that stage with the toilet scheme.
Right, thank you. Any other questions, comments, issues? No. Thank you very much, Judith.
Okay. Can I take my leave?
You can.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye.
Thank you for coming in. Bye.
Bye, Judith.
Right, the agenda-y things. We finished that bit of the public question time and we'll reconvene the library bit later.
We've got one more public member, Pat.
Oh, sorry. Of course we have, sorry.
About her grant application.
Right. Sorry, I forgot.
Okay, Sarah, do you want to say something? We can't hear you at the moment. You've frozen.
Hello?
Okay, you're back.
Hello?
Hello, we can. You're freezing
Can
intermittent.
you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yes. Sarah, can I suggest you turn your video?
Can you hear me now?
Only just. Turn your video off and do sound only. It helps.
Yeah, you can, right, okay. My name's Sarah, I'm the business manager.
Sarah, this is not working.
Is that no?
No, we're getting little fragments of your voice.
I'm going to turn your video off, Sarah, okay?
Not working. Try speaking now, Sarah.
Don't know how to turn my
I've done
video
it, Sarah. I've turned you off.
Sarah, speak now because we've turned your video off.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, speak now.
Can
No,
you hear me now?
not really. This is not going to work.
Well, if she signs out
you
and
hear
then
me
comes back in
now?
again.
Is that the best thing?
Hello?
Sarah, sign out and come back in.
Hello?
I don't know whether she heard that or not.
Well, she's gone, so I think she
Let's
did.
move on with the agenda.
Can I just,
comes.
sorry, Pat, can I
Rachel.
just ask what grant application was she speaking to?
Yes.
Brockhall School.
Oh, the one we got very late.
Yeah. Well, not as late as the Cartworth Moor one, but
Yeah.
right, she's coming back in.
Can I just come in, interject before we go any further with this lady? Did I see it written down somewhere where we shouldn't be supporting schools through the parish council?
That's been reversed, Judith, because apparently you can use section 137 for schools. So we have reversed the decision that we made earlier because the advice has changed. But I'll talk more about that at the next council meeting.
Sarah, can you hear us? And you're muted, so if you can hear us, unmute yourself and speak.
Hello?
Got you.
Hello?
Hello.
Brilliant. Hello.
Hello. Please
My name's
start.
Sarah Armitage. Hello, my name is Sarah Armitage and I'm the school business manager at Brockhall School. I originally wrote to the ward councillors to see if we could have any funding via section 106 funding or the community infrastructure levy. Councillor Greaves came back to me and said that section 106 wasn't a possibility because many of the developments, the more recent developments, have been in the Honley area. So he said it should be used across communities. And what I should do instead is apply to the parish council, which is why I've made this application. Councillor Greaves also advised that we may be able to get some funding from the ward councillors, but in the first instance, he said I should apply to you for some funding. Now, I don't believe that Brockhall School has ever had any funding from Home Valley Parish Council in the past. And now we're approaching you for quite a substantial amount, but to do build an outdoor canopy by our Key Stage 1 classrooms. So I've put everything that I could into the grant application. I had to do it rather quickly because I only found out last Tuesday that you had this meeting today. So I did it in the same day Councillor Greaves told me to apply. So I hope you will consider our application, and I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Sarah. We've got your application. We've got your written application, so we can refer to the.
Yeah, we got it all, Sarah.
Yes. Does anybody have any questions for Sarah? And can we keep them very brief because this is proving quite difficult. Judith.
Can I just say,
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Sarah. You're being asked a question. Judith.
it needs to be on a proper application form.
It is.
We need to, what, I only seen it on a letter.
No, it's on a proper form.
Yeah, it's a proper application.
Yeah, it's a proper application. Any other questions?
Are there some costings? Are there some costings then on it as well? Proper costings?
Yes. You've had the papers, Judith. We got them several days ago.
That's what I say. I only seem to have got it on a letter form where she talks about what they want to do and possibly how much it's going to cost.
Well, that's the rest of us have got a full application, so we don't need to hold Sarah up. I don't know whether Sarah can hear any of this. Are there any other questions for Sarah? No. Thank you, Sarah. I don't know if you can hear.
Sports England.
I beg your pardon, Judith?
Has she tried Sports England?
Well, it's not a sport application.
Not a sport application. They wouldn't be giving it. Sarah, if you can hear us, we will discuss this later in the meeting when it comes up on the agenda, and we'll look at your grant in detail. Thank you for talking to us, and we'll let you go now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So, next on the agenda, we've got apologies for absence. We haven't got any personal and disclosable pecuniary interests from councillors.
No, none.
Yes.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, yes. Because of the
Civic Hall Trust.
Civic Hall. Yeah. Any officers' interests, pecuniary or personal?
Just to say that I'm actually a trustee of Friends of Honley Library, so that's a personal.
Oh yes,
interest,
and
isn't it?
I'm not a trustee of Honley Library, but I'm a friend, so we better record that as well. Are there any items on the agenda that we feel should be discussed in private? No. Good. Now, before we move on, I would like to take a moment just to thank Tom Dixon, Councillor Dixon, for his hard work as chair of CASC, and we're all very grateful to him for that. Right, minutes of the last meeting. You've all had them. Are you happy with them? Are there any issues arising from them? I don't mean matters arising. I mean queries or no. Okay, so we accept the minutes. Thank you. On to, well, Tom, sorry.
Yeah, someone needs to propose to accept them, so I'll propose that we accept them.
Thank you. Does anybody second that? Thanks,
I'll
Kath.
second that.
Thanks, Kath. That's proposed and seconded. All those in favour? That's everybody. Now, can I suggest that we change the order and put Honley Library next before, and then do the Civic Hall and the loos and things? Does anybody object to that? Tom, you think it's a good idea? Does somebody need to propose that, or can we just, right, are you all happy to do Honley Library?
Yeah, I'll second that.
I didn't get that.
As you as chairman, you can change the agenda.
I can do it myself, right? Then I suggest we do. So on to Honley Library. Denny and Carrie, do you want to talk to us, update us on the library?
Yes, I can do that if that's okay, and Carrie come in. I did send an update to the clerk, to Liz, and can I say before I start just how much we appreciate the support that we're getting and the input from the parish council. We have put in an order to Kirklees Council for work to be carried out to the roof, because this work was identified as long ago as March in an inspection that was paid for to give us ground rules as to exactly what would be the amount of money that we needed to spend on the building. And the inspection did say that we needed to do work to the valley guttering. So at this stage, we have written to the parish council, to Kirklees, to Property Services, and asked that they carry out any work required to the valley guttering to ensure that there is no water ingress between now and when the asset transfer goes through. The order has gone in, but so far we have had no feedback from them. We did have some concerns that attached to the hosting agreement, which came to the parish council from Mark Varley, that it did say that a condition for you taking over the building would be that it be kept at a temperature of 20 degrees from October to March. Now, that's fine, but although a new boiler was put in the library over just 12 months ago, there are no controls to that central heating system within the library itself. It's a very complicated system and you have to go down into the boiler room. So we have said that we do want to flag up with you that we are working on this with the green energy people and with Stephen Barker, because once the asset transfer is taken over, it is absolutely essential that we do get the lighting and the boiler sorted so that we can reduce the energy costs. And I just want you to know that we are working on that. The other thing that's very interesting is that there is a group in Honley called Honley Community Growers, and they have, as you probably know, said that they are very anxious to start a project in the library grounds to do raised beds and do work with the community, make sure that disabled people have access around the beds, that we can do events with children, and they're anxious to start on that. But of course, that won't happen until the transfer comes to the parish council, because Kirklees aren't happy for us to do anything at the moment. And just finally, the trustees, we have had quotes from 3 different local builders, and we are lucky that we do have, as a trustee, Malcolm Ellis, who is an architect and surveyor. And we are doing 2 things at the moment, which is updating the quotes for all building work, trying to get a project together so that we do them in a very systematic way once the building is transferred. And also we're in consultation with MJC of Honley to ensure that they will take over from us a schedule of routine maintenance and health and safety obligations once the building is handed over, so that we are perfectly certain that all the things like PAT testing, water treatment, electrical testing are done on an annual basis. And I think that's about where we are at the moment.
Can I ask you, before I open it up, how are your negotiations on hosting agreements and heads of terms going? Is it all still amicable?
Yes, it is amicable. I have forwarded to Liz, the clerk, our comments on the hosting agreement, and I think I need to go over to Liz on that.
Right. I think we've had a copy of that, haven't we, Liz?
You've got, I think you have, and you've also got the reply that came back from Kirklees. That's the final.
Yes. So, has anybody got any questions? Comments?
Can we haven't yet got full verification that we have got the library building sorted out from Kirklees yet, have we?
No.
No, it is due to go to Cabinet in November.
November Cabinet, yes.
Right, well, this to do with the gardening and what have you must wait until we have got absolute finalisation of it.
Absolutely.
Because if there's any problems whatsoever, you know, we don't want to get into any unnecessary trouble because we've sort of jumped the gun.
That's I absolutely agree with you there, and we need to make sure of that. I'm working with the girl who is leading this, and they've now got a constitution. They're looking at getting insurance. which is something that we need to be absolutely certain of before we let them on site. And I agree, it would be difficult to have them on site until such time as the asset transfer has taken place.
Thank you, Jenny.
It has
Thank
to
you,
be
Judith.
fully completed.
Thank you,
Yes.
Judith. Any other comments from it? No? Well, thank you for your report. We will we'll continue our discussions, and you are free to leave us if you wish to.
Thank you. Can I just ask, can I just say, because Carrie's here, does Carrie just want to add anything that I may have forgotten?
I don't, you haven't forgotten anything, Jenny, but I suppose just as summary, we're ready to go, aren't we? We're ready to move.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
We're well organised and ready to move once this goes through Cabinet, which we hope it will, on the 19th of November.
Yes.
Fingers crossed. Mary.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, in terms of the insurance for the group that wants to do the work in the garden, that you probably are aware that Natural Kirklees provide free insurance, free public. Yeah, you do know. I can see you nodding.
Yes,
yeah,
we've
which is
actually,
incredibly helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've actually had a meeting on site with Andy Wickham.
Great. That's brilliant.
Yes, thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you.
Tom?
How has the reopening been going?
Sorry?
The opening of the library.
It's reopened, hasn't it? Or is it next?
It's open. It's partially. Do you want to do it, Jenny?
No, carry on, Carrie.
Okay. Right. It's open 2 afternoons a week, Tuesday and Friday, between 1 and 4. And my understanding is that you can go in and safely browse. So 4 people allowed in to the library, and they get a 15-minute slot. And then if there's nobody wanting to rush through the doors, they can stay. But there are other aspects that are not working, like don't think the photocopiers are up and running. And I don't think that the computers are up and running yet. But there seems to be quite a lot going on, and they are kind of, they are moving forward, saying that they will be training volunteers to be COVID safe in the library setting. So there's a sort of a projected return for volunteers, but it's watch this space and we'll get trained.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I ask, has it not had a deep clean prior to its opening because of this COVID? Has it not had that?
Yes, it has had a deep clean, and as far as I'm concerned, the library looks much better because a lot of the tatty notices and things that were all around the building have all been taken down, and it looks quite good actually, Judith.
And what about the books and things? Are they all safe for people to be touching? Because I'm given to understand a lot of this can be spread via paper.
Yes, but they only stay contagious for a few days, and nobody's touched them for months.
Yeah, but you only need it for half a day, Pat, and you can be.
But sorry, I thought you meant as part of the deep clean. There are procedures in place for what happens to books that have been
When people come to take a book back, Judith, they put them all in a bin, which is outside the library main door. That bin then. The books in that bin are then isolated for 72 hours before they're returned to the shelves.
Right. And what about people taking them off the shelves, browsing in them, and then putting them back? Does that happen?
No, they're not allowed to do that. They can browse, but if they take a book from the shelf, then they have to either hand it back to the staff for isolating, or they take it out themselves.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
That does, thank you.
Good.
I think it's fair to say we're all quite excited about this. There seems to be a distinct danger that it's actually going to happen.
Yes, and the other good thing is that
Sorry, I missed that bit. What did you say?
I was saying, I think we're all excited about this. There seems to be a real danger that it's actually going to happen in the new year.
Yes.
What's going to happen?
The transfer.
Oh, right.
That's when the hard
Okay.
work starts.
Well, thank you both.
It's a
Thank you.
pleasure.
Madam Chair,
Thank you for your
Bye.
support.
it's
Thank
Andrew.
you.
Thank you
Bye.
for coming.
I've been trying to
Thank
Thank you.
Right.
Bye.
Pat, I've got a relevant question to them before they go.
Oh, don't go yet. Don't go.
Okay.
Pat, can you
Doug's
not
has got
give
a
me
question.
Sorry, I was indicating for at least 10
Sorry,
minutes.
I'm finding it very hard because I've got my agenda up. I've only got little
I know, yeah, well,
bits.
I'm trying to manage it on one screen the same. The only thing I was going to say is I used to work in the council and alongside the team that managed these transfers, and it's fair to say they do make an absolute meal of them, and these things drag on much longer than anybody ever expected. So a couple of questions on that. I know some people have been effectively given keys to buildings before they'd even finalised the contract, and they've been in there for 2 years running buildings now. Do we know if the authority's likely to come to some sort of similar arrangement? And my second question, I guess this is a question for us as a parish, if and when they get the paperwork sorted, have we already approved that as a parish to sign on the dotted line, or are we going to have to go back to a full parish meeting or an emergency CAS meeting? I just
Well,
wonder.
on the second point, I'm going to suggest later on, and we can vote on it, that we form a CASC subcommittee that is purely about the asset transfer, that can expedite things and call emergency Zoom CASC meetings if we need them. So that was my plan for us dealing with it as and when it happens. We have not yet, as a parish council, received any heads of terms or anything from Kirklees. That won't happen until the cabinet does it. Judith. Sorry, Jen, what was your first bit of the question that I think Jenny or Carrie could probably answer, Doug's?
Sorry,
hang on, I can see you, Judith, after they've answered Doug's question.
The first question was, has the council discussed sort of interim lease arrangements whereby you could actually occupy without full contracts? Because I'm pretty sure that's taken place in numerous other buildings.
We haven't.
No.
What I would say, Doug, is that, like for the Civic Hall, we've only just done the agreement, and it's 2 years since they moved in, and we are going to have solicitors who'll be working on the agreement, so we do need something interim, don't we? Because it's going to take a while to actually sign the lease.
Yeah, this is not going to be done by the end of January, I don't think.
Can I just come in? When we get the paperwork back, it will have to go to our solicitors for it to be
Yes, of
looked over,
course.
to make sure that it's absolutely correct, and then it will go back to presumably Kirklees for their agreement and to their solicitor, and then it will come back to us again then for finalisation, hopefully in front of the solicitor and everybody else, then go back to Kirklees, and then with a little bit of luck we might have the building.
Right, Carrie, are you wanting to ask something?
I think I only wanted to point out that this is an unusual asset transfer. It has taken every bit as long as Doug's was hinting. It's over 3 years now we've been trying for this. So it's a question of stamina. But which we've got in bucket loads, I think. But the other thing is that Kirklees will be continuing to run a service from this building. So that's what makes it not like other asset transfers. And that means that we will be working closely with the library service, but even more closely with the parish council to make sure that it's all successful.
Thank you.
Can I ask, is there going to be a qualified librarian coming to work?
It doesn't currently have a qualified librarian. Very few of the people who work in library services are qualified librarians. Only the ones in Huddersfield are qualified librarians. We will certainly in the short term, still be having a member of staff from Kirklees Library Service.
Yeah, and the way it works at the moment, there is when the library is properly open, Friends of Honley Library volunteers manage the service for
7
hours each week, and 12 hours there would be a member of Kirklees Library Services staff, which, as Pat has pointed out, it's not the same as being a qualified librarian, but there is a staff member available.
Can I just say, ironically, Judith, there are 2 members of the Library Management Committee who are qualified librarians, the volunteers.
But none of the existing staff. The same's true in Home First, Judith. They're not qualified librarians. They're experienced. The people who are experienced at working in libraries and know what to do. But they're not qualified librarians. Okay, shall we move on?
Right.
Yes. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Okay, so, sorry?
Half of us gone.
Judith, are you raising a point?
No, I'm just saying half of them have gone on the screen. Oh, they're coming back slowly. Okay.
So what we need to do is, damn it, I can't cope with everything on one screen. We need to approve the 2 communications that have been made about the asset transfer and the map of the boundaries. You've had these bits of paper, and we need at this meeting to approve their proposal for the management service of the library within the asset transfer. And you've all seen the proposal document. I have to say, to me, it looks perfectly reasonable and unremarkable. Has anybody got a problem with that? Anything to add to that? Anything they're concerned about? No? Can I ask somebody? Rachel?
Sorry, I had one thing where I can't remember which of the terms documents it referred to, but there was something about the use of the Honley Library as a polling station. I wasn't quite clear. One question was, I didn't know whether is it currently used as a polling station, but also I wasn't sure whether there's normally, well, my understanding from the experience at my children's school is that there's no real payment given for use of a building as a polling station. It just kind of happens. There may be some caretaking costs that are given. But I suppose I was just conscious that that would potentially take away a day of library activity, albeit not very often, once a year. But I just wasn't sure if that was something that was new to Honley Library and therefore would affect service users in a different way to now.
It is new. It's not been used as a polling station since I've been there. And it's an interesting point because whilst as the library service can make demands of us in a strange way, even though they are kind of strange theoretical tenants in the building, I'm not sure that the council and electoral services have rights to free use of the library just because the library service does. So we might want to look at that. I mean, whether we would object, because as a matter of information, it's highly unlikely that the library will ever be a full 5.5 days a week. Ever. It hasn't been for several years now. And it could be managed around if we chose to use it as a polling station, as if the trustees felt it was a good thing to cement it into the community, and they might wish to do it, it might happen. But I'm not sure that the library service has the right to tell us we have to let it go. Sean?
I think it's just a contingency, isn't it? Because there are two polling stations that have been used for as long as I've lived in Honley, which is like nearly 15 years. The village hall and the community centre on Stony Lane. They're the only two that, and I think they've been used for a long time. So I think it's just a contingency. If there was like a flood or something like that in one of those, they've got somewhere else to put the polling station in that if something happens to the other place.
But I think, Rachel, to go back to your point, it might be worth getting the solicitors when they get involved in all this to look at that and see if Cleves Council has the right to tell us we have to. I mean, I'm sure we would wish to if there was a problem with the others, but you know.
I just wondered if they're taking the opportunity to move it, perhaps because there is a cost associated with one of the other locations. So I just think it's something just worth looking out for, because once you become a polling station, yes, it's an important facility, so it might be consciously, but we don't want to accidentally fall into doing it. That's all.
The other two locations have been asset transferred from Kirklees or K&H to community organisations. So. I suppose they're in a similar position to us, aren't they? Or they would be when the library gets transferred.
Yes, we better get the solicitors to look well at that one, because they might be trying to pull a fast one. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean,
Mary.
Sorry, I mean, it's clear there in the heads of terms that it's a separate collateral agreement, I think it calls it. Yeah, separate collateral agreement for the hire of the hall as a polling station on an occasional basis. So it's you know, it's all there in the
Yeah. But as Rachel said, we don't want to end up with it being the default polling station without any reference to the trustees and whether it fits in with their plans and all that sort of thing.
You get quite a substantial amount of money for it being a polling station, you know. Didn't a freebie?
I thought it was.
No.
I think it depends on the building that's being used. I'm not sure you always, because I know it's a big grumble at my kids' school that the costs of closing the school are far greater than the benefit that's received by the community. Anyway, we'll move on. It's just I just wanted to raise.
Wait, it needs look. Liz, can you make a note of that particularly when we talk to the solicitors? So, do we approve the proposal pending all of that and legal things? Can somebody propose that we approve it, please? Thanks, Jason. Seconder. Thanks, Tom. All those in favour? Doug's? Yeah, everybody. Right. We need, now we've already talked, was it in finance that we considered the Honley Growers application?
Yeah, it is. I think we just need to...
It's just a case of waiting until we own it, isn't it? I mean, I think we've approved it in principle, and when we own it, they'll get it.
Yeah.
So can somebody, Rachel?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I thought in finance, from memory, I think we approved it up to £1,000.
Yeah.
I think. Oh, sorry. This one doesn't say.
They were asking for 1,300, and we said we'd give them 1,000. I think it was.
Yeah. So it's,
can't give them anything until we've got it approved.
No, that's what we've just said, Judith. We are saying that when it's approved, we will give them the 1,000 that's already been agreed by finance. Okay.
Well, is this next budget, or is it coming from this existing budget?
We'll come on to that. We'll come on to that when we talk about the state of our budgets and next year's budgets and what we're going to do, if that's all right with everybody. And we want to circulated 3 quotes from lawyers, because we need to appoint some lawyers. I ended up with no strong view about any of them, to be perfectly honest. Did you form an opinion, Liz, other than getting the numbers?
I did. I thought
somebody being better to work with than another person. The numbers were very similar, weren't they?
Well, actually, quite a big difference in the hourly rate.
All right.
I think the cheapest option is the current solicitor, and I've already expressed some of my doubts before about how quickly, how long things have taken to finish. The solicitor in Huddersfield talked a lot and just confused me. And I think the quote from the local solicitor is the best one. It's the cheapest, and it's just the most straightforward.
And local.
Local.
Is that somebody in the Home Valley, Liz?
Yeah.
In Holmfirth.
In Holmfirth. I don't think that's suitable.
Shall we?
Well, he could have a conflict of
Hang
interest.
on, Judith, Rachel has her hand up. I'll take Rachel, then I'll take you.
Sorry, I was just querying the comment that the local solicitor is the cheapest one, because it seems to say it's £1,500 plus VAT and disbursements, whereas the middle one is £925 plus.
Yeah, but her hourly rate is a lot less than the Huddersfield one, who is something like 200 and something an hour.
Yeah, 150 rather than 245. I mean, to be honest, I'm happy to go with whichever seems the most efficient and effective at doing it. And if that's the local one, then
well, we don't really know. That's the trouble. And they all said it's like asking how long's a piece of string. You know, it could take 2 years, it could take 5 years to get
Judith,
it all.
what would you had a point to raise? I've seen your hand, Jason. I'll come to you after Judith. Judith.
Well, I think if we take on a local one, it could have a conflict of interest, because anybody that goes to the library or who's dealt with this solicitor would have to declare that. You're better to go out of the district, out of Honley, even if you go to someone in Holmfirth, somebody that doesn't actually know, well, would know what's, obviously I'd been a solicitor, but I think, myself, I would prefer that you didn't go to one so local.
Thank you. Jason, then Doug.
Yeah, I'm going to different to what Councillor Roberts said. I think we need to work with somebody that we can work with. If Liz feels that she can work with his solicitor, I think we've got to take her advice on this.
We've had hassle with this chap in Honley once before.
Hang on, Judith. I think you've already spoken. It's Doug's now.
Thank you, Chair. The points I was going to make, two things really. One, I think solicitors are professional, and I don't think there's really an issue about conflict of interest. They should be able to rise above that with their trade, really. I think it's more important you've got somebody who's responsive, but I mean, I'd be happy just to approve it if we need to get this going, but my concern is will we still be here 2 years later when the bills will start to rack up? The other question I was going to write, so one, if you need to make a decision today, I'd support the recommendation of Liz. But the other thought is, have we actually contacted people at Meltham Council to ask who they use for the Carlisle Institute, find out who they used at the Civic Hall in Holmfirth, who the Marsden Mechanics used, because all these people have used a firm of solicitors to do effectively the same job. So
Liz has already answered about the Civic Hall. She said they were slow and she didn't think they were that one.
Well, it may be worth a call to see who dealt with the Carlisle Institute, because the Meltham Town Council took responsibility for that. And also the clerk there is a legal person herself, so she may also have a useful view if we don't need to make a quick decision. But if we need to make a quick decision, I'll support going with what Liz says.
I did ask the clerk at Meltham, and she just said, try 3 people and get your quote. That's what I've done.
Right. Any further queries, comments, concerns before we move to somebody making a proposal?
Can I propose that action, Madam Chairman, please?
Can you propose? I didn't hear you, Jason.
I'm proposing the action of the recommendation from our clerk.
Right. Second,
I'll
anybody second that?
I'll second that.
Right.
I'll
Can
second
all
it.
those in favour of going with the clerk's recommendation, please show your hand.
Which is what?
The local one.
The third one, which actually is WAC.
So that's everybody except Councillor Roberts. Councillor Roberts, do you want to vote against or abstain?
No, I just want to know what they call the solicitor that's going to, that you're asking to do the work, possibly.
That last one is Ramsden's solicitors.
Ramsden's?
Yeah.
Is it Ramsden's in Honley or is it Ramsden's in Home Firth?
Is it? Well, I wrote to the one in Home Firth. So
there isn't a Ramsden's in Honley.
No.
Are you ready to vote, Councillor Roberts, or do you want to abstain?
No, I shall abstain.
You'll abstain. Councillor Dixon?
Yeah, Chair, I'd like to abstain as well. Just because I've used Ramsden's for purchasing my house and I'm going to use them again for selling in my house I'm going to be doing soon.
Right.
Yeah, I'd like to abstain for that reason because I've kind of got an interest, haven't I suppose?
Right. Okay, I think that's carried even with those 2 abstentions fairly comfortably. Everybody else voted in favour. Thank you. Now, I want to suggest that we form a subcommittee of a couple of us or 3 of us who can, as things come in, can look at them, go through them together, perhaps using email or Zoom, and come back to, if we need it, an extraordinary CASC meeting and that sort of thing. Is there anybody who's interested in being in this, on this subcommittee? Sean? 1. Doug? You are? I am, and I am as well. So we've got 3 to pick from. Shall we say we 3 will be a subcommittee? Nod, Sean, Rachel.
Chair, sorry, I'm not volunteering to be on it, but I'm just conscious the subcommittee won't be able to make decisions. It will have to come back to CASC for any decision making, but it can obviously review documents and give comments, but it could.
That was what I was thinking. If we could go through documents, we can then call extraordinary CASC meetings and say, here is a summary.
Yeah, perfect.
You know, you've had the document, but here's what we've seen and read and agreed. We recommend A, B or C.
Yeah.
And then the CASC meetings, if we have to call them, can be fairly quick. And I mean, thankfully, Zoom makes it much easier. Rachel.
Sorry, the other thing I was just going to add is that given that it's the parish council in its entirety taking on the asset, I think it will then need a full council meeting, which is going to be a short, extraordinary one to approve the major document.
But I'm assuming we should get CASC agreement and then CASC should recommend it to the full council. And again, they can all be quick Zoom meetings if we 3 kind of go through all the wading that'll need doing initially. We'll also be waiting for the, I mean, we can go through it as rapidly as we like, but the solicitors may not keep pace with us.
Might be other way around, and then what?
It's been known for solicitors not to be that rapid. Okay, so can somebody propose this subcommittee, please? Thank you, Jason. Seconded. Tom. Everybody in favour? Thank you. Carried. Right. That brings us. We can then go back on the agenda to the Civic Hall, and we have 3 items. And I'll point out here that we don't really need to discuss these because they're really just to note. Items 33, 34 and 35 are simply to note. Does somebody have to propose that we note them, or do we just vote on noting them?
Just note them.
Noted.
We note them. Put your hand up if you note them. Fine. Okay, we'll move on to voting a second person on to Home Firth Civic Hall Trust. Apparently, they'd quite like a bit more involvement. Well, as what was her name? Said earlier. A bit more interaction and maybe a bit more ideas and getting involved. Kath, would you like to talk to this? Because you know what they're like and you go. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I've been a representative now, I think, for a couple of years or so. And they do like for you to help them. When there's a function on, you know, they do like you to go and help out, whether it's making butties or selling raffle tickets, washing up. you know, so just, you know, bearing in mind, whoever goes on, just think about, you know, helping them as well as going
Right.
to the meeting.
It's not just a matter of tipping up for a meeting every now and then.
No, no.
Right.
Meetings are on a Wednesday every month.
Right. Now, she did say it didn't have to be a councillor. I mean, all of us, I'm aware, are pretty busy, and we're all on more than one committee and everything else. We don't have to do this now. I mean, I think it's a good idea if we do get more involved. Jason.
I was just wondering, would either of the clerks be interested in doing this type of thing on behalf of the council?
I didn't hear you properly.
Clerk or the deputy clerk.
I think they're pretty busy. They may want to. Kath.
What about you, Pat? Because I think in the past it's been, Rachel might know on this, it's usually been the chair and vice chair of the committee. Am I right, Rachel?
Sorry.
Can I answer that
Yeah,
one,
I don't think it. It may have been originally the cask chair and vice chair. You might well be right, but then I don't recall that there was an automatic expectation, particularly as we're taking on other assets. I mean, I do wonder if there's any other potential people we could approach who are, I mean, thinking more widely across the members of the council. Obviously, we've got quite a lot of co-opted community folk involved in the community, in the climate emergency committees. I do wonder if that might be an option to see if any of them are interested, because they'd bring a different perspective, perhaps, to the Civic Trust. But I don't know. That's just a thought.
Jason? Jason, you had your hand up. Do you want to speak?
Yeah, originally, yes. Originally, Councillor Bellamy went on the group as the chairman of the council. She was the original and stayed on it. But was also, first, it was the original, the Kath stayed on and there was a new chairman each time. But I never did it, so Kath carried on. But originally, it was originally for the group meetings, not for the other bits and bats. I think Councillor Bellamy has done the other bits on her own back, a lot of it, of helping out. But originally, it was only to be a member of the board, not to do all the other bits and bats.
I think that I take your point, Jason, but I think they've made it clear that they're not looking for somebody who just tips up to meetings. They actually said as much, and I think they want more involvement. Yeah, I mean, Kath, you very kindly nominated me, and I might be interested in that, but I won't be free really to commit to any further commitments on the council till after about Easter, because I'm completing a very big thing that I've got that I'm doing. But around about Easter, I should have more time, and it would be a possibility. But until then, it's not something I can take on. Doug, I can see your hand.
Well, yeah, I guess. Sorry, Chair, do you want me to come in?
Doug Zenkath.
Yeah. My question is: are we on the committee because effectively it's our building and ultimately we're responsible for it? Because often in that case you'd attend the committee almost as an observer to see that everything is okay. Because the problem is, if we put a councillor on there, then they have to declare an interest in everything that's discussed in the council because they're trying to wear two hats. So I think we absolutely should be in the room. We absolutely should be proactive. But if we're there formally to keep an eye on it, then I think it should be a councillor. But I think that role then comes with this inevitable conflict of interest every time the Civic asks for some funding. So I think it's a bit of a difficult one, but I do think I guess what I'm saying is I think it should be a councillor, not an external co-optee.
Well, no, hang on. There are two issues here. I saw your hand, Tom. I'll come to you in a sec. I think if Kath is willing to carry on, and she's certainly been doing a grand job, I don't think there's any question about Kath not continuing unless she wants to resign. I think they're asking us if we could provide additional involvement. Tom.
I'm happy for Kath to stay on, but it's up to other councillors whether you want to do it or not, because a lot of us have got other things on and are busy.
Yeah.
And if there is only one of us on there, I think it should be a councillor. And I think it's useful having a councillor on there just so they can feed back to us at these meetings about what's happening and different things and answer questions. And also they can answer questions at the committee meetings, at their meetings about how the council is and what they're thinking about different things. It just helps to have somebody there with that bit of knowledge and in-betweener kind of thing. But if we can't get somebody else, then I think you should just stay as one person.
Kath? Kath, you had your hand up earlier.
Oh, yes. There's a civic hall, a trust meeting on Wednesday evening. So I don't know if you want me to go back and tell them anything.
I think there's two things. One is, it is my sense that the mood of this meeting is that if you're happy to do it, we'd like you to continue. Are you happy to do it?
Yeah.
Good. I'm right in reading everybody, aren't I? I mean, yeah. It doesn't look as though we're going to resolve whether we can find anybody additional tonight. I think we could all go off and think if there's anybody we know who isn't a councillor, who could be the additional input they're wanting without necessarily being a councillor, and we can all have a think about if there's anybody we know who'd enjoy getting involved with that. Can I ask everybody to have a think about that, please? Okay, so I think we are saying in terms of we're considering voting, I think I'm right in saying, Liz, that we are happy to propose a second person. At the moment, we haven't got anybody in mind, and that we will give it some thought as to if there's anybody who can be of use to them. And in the meanwhile, we are all agreeing that Councillor Bellamy continue in her role as she's been doing it.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, Jason, sorry.
I think Jason wants to speak.
Yeah. Jason, go ahead.
Can I suggest we just leave it at Kath and revisit this in the new term, because as you indicated that you might be interested after April, maybe we need to leave it till then to make a decision.
Well, if in the meantime we think of somebody brilliant,
so can we just propose that we leave it at one for the time being, but in May that we revisit to see if we want to bring a second one in.
Okay. Is everybody happy with that? Yeah. Okay, on to the loos.
God.
I read the paper and it was all, there was nothing I felt that anybody would be terribly upset about. The one thing that we were talking about using the urinal space and adjusting it to be possibly an extension of the existing shop. At some point, there is a suggestion that rather than being part of Monty's, it be a hot drink thing. Now, I think it was in a cask meeting that we said, and indeed we refused an application for somebody who wanted it to be a cafe, because we felt that the town has more than enough cafes and we didn't want that to be coffees and teas and sandwiches. Rachel?
I was just going to say, I don't think we refused having a cafe, because there was a cafe that was nearly did go in the empty unit. So I don't think it was a principal thing. And in fact, having a kiosk sort of near the bus station was certainly in CASC meetings that I can recall over the time that we've been looking for a tenant was not objected to, albeit there are lots of cafes, but it would be a slightly different offer because it would be a takeaway. I think that there is still the issue of the fact that it being a community asset and being transferred, it would mean that there'd be significantly over 30% being used for commercial purposes. Now, I'm not averse to the discussion being held with Kirklees about what the options are, but I think we need to be a bit careful about sort of jumping in on that. And I think one thing I'm conscious of as well is that something I think would be sensible with a kind of the climate emergency in mind is making sure that we make it as efficient a building as possible, and that may mean some more work to make it more insulated, or potentially even putting some, water heater on the roof or solar panels on the roof or something like that. So I'm a bit nervous about kind of rearranging everything without us looking at the building as a whole. But clearly we need to understand if there is an option to increase the commercial element, and if there isn't, then that gives us a one scope, and if there is, then that gives us another scope. But I don't think we should start talking about how we would necessarily use that space just yet.
Okay, Doug's then Tom, then Kath.
Thank you, Pat. Yeah, I'm very committed to going back to the full toilet space, and I guess if it was up to me, I wouldn't have got rid of the other space in the first place. And I say that from somebody who spends a lot of time in market towns and sees the value of having public toilets in the middle of town. There's hardly anywhere in Kirklees that's got them now because the council's just shut so many over the years. And I do think they're a really important asset that we should fight to retain. We've got an increasingly elderly population. We've got a lot of walkers and cyclists, other people coming through. And I think we get rid of public toilets out of peril because we're never going to get them back again. So I wouldn't really want to look to diminish it any further than what it is. And I'm hoping after COVID we can reinstate the rest of it.
Tom?
Yeah, I don't think we're ever intending to get rid of the toilets, or so I think that we're not going to do that. But I wouldn't like to see the provision be reduced any further. This year's been a bit of a quiet year for Home Firth as a town, but when we do have things on like the food festival, the folk festival, the toilets are a lot more busier and a lot more used. So I would be reluctant to reduce the provision any further. Like at the moment, it's probably sustainable for what we have. We just having the one cubicle open because Home Firth's generally a lot quieter. But in the years to come, Home Firth will hopefully be a lot busier with the festivals and a lot more used. So I don't think that we definitely shouldn't. We should just keep them as they are for now. I don't think we should do any plans to make any more changes for the time being.
Thank you, Kath.
Well, yes, it's a tourist area, and and it's the only one in the area, and we need these toilets. And as been said, it's been very quiet because of COVID, but when it gets sorted and we've got people coming back, we are going to need these toilets. I'd say, I think perhaps we could go and have a look at what's left and sort of take it from there.
I could do with this door. Oh, close now. It's all right, nearly finished now.
So,
I'm all.
Do you want to mute yourself, Councillor Roberts, for a minute? So are we suggesting another loo visit like the one we had before? Are we allowed to? Actually, we're not allowed to meet at the moment, are we? Indoors.
I think Councillor Blacker wants to speak.
And so does Councillor Hogley. Mary, then Rachel. Thank you, Tom.
I was just going to say there's a comment in the report about the difficulty of cleaning the urinals, and you know, I think, and the female experiences, there are never enough female toilets anywhere. So, I mean, maybe one possibility might be to turn the urinals into some more toilets with stalls. And I certainly need more than, I would be not too happy about cutting down the capacity if you think when the festivals are in there, but that might be something that could be explored.
Rachel?
I was just going to say that, to be fair to the public toilets, we did refurbish them, you know, a couple of years back. They're actually in very decent condition. It's difficult to look at them at the moment anyway because they're all locked away. But you know, they did get repainted, retiled. I appreciate they're metal toilets, but they're fairly representative of public toilets that need to be pretty robust for their use. And personally, I think the split, like in the men's toilet, the reason for having a urinal was then you actually had more facilities for men to, more men to make use of the toilets at the same time, which obviously is important during festivals. So to be honest, I think we should just I don't think we should look at a whole new redevelopment of the toilets again. I think there is an opportunity to look at making them more efficient, as I mentioned before, but I do think actually for the space, we should just go with that for the moment until we're back to a normal year, which hopefully next year will be more normal, and then we can review the usage of them. And bear in mind, we've just in the process of putting on the water dispenser on them as well. There'll be greater visibility. There's the shop as part of it, and I think there's then maybe an opportunity to have a bit of a conversation with perhaps users during the festivals as well, and gauge whether they're heavily used in those festivals or actually people go off and use toilets in bars and pubs as well, in which case that would be an opportunity to reduce the space. But I don't think at this moment this is a good time to decide on how to use the space or spend money on improving it further.
Before I ask somebody to propose that, does anybody want to speak? Kath?
You mentioned about Monty's loft being increased. Have they mentioned it? Have they wanted to make their shop bigger?
I don't know. It's in the document. They have, right?
Yeah.
They have.
Well, I think they were asked by John Ford's wife, because she's the one who's putting forward this sort of plan, and she'd obviously consulted them, and they said if they had more space, they would use it. Yeah.
All right. Can I just ask? I know myself and Mary's been and looked. Has anybody else been to Monty's? Yeah, I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, I bought a couple of presents from there for like friends' birthdays.
Yeah.
Really good for like the niche products.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really like it.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't keen at first when we were talking about it, but I've certainly changed my mind since. I think it's brought something to Home Firth.
Good. Excellent. So does somebody want to propose that we leave this till next year, till we've had a normal year, and then we'll consider it? Kath? Seconded by Tom? All those in favour? Everybody? Councillor Roberts, you're mute.
I'm going to abstain from that at the moment.
Thank you. Right. And then review the contract, 2138. Reviewing the contract. It's been a long time since it was looked at. There can't be any objections to reviewing it, can there? Does somebody want to propose that we review it? No. Jason, right. Seconded by Rachel. All those in favour of reviewing it? Everybody? Right. Are you an abstentioner, Councillor Roberts?
No, I'm just saying, what are we reviewing? I couldn't quite hear what was said.
The contract to the management of the Loo. It's been a long time since it was looked at, and we're not voting in favour of increasing it. We're voting in favour of reviewing it.
Of what? Which contract's this?
For the management of the toilets.
And the cleaning.
And the cleaning.
Because at the moment what we have is it's paid at the rate that the contractor is paid. So it's £15 an hour, plus we pay mileage every time she comes.
We don't need to get into the details. We've agreed, we're just agreeing whether we'll review it or not, Liz. Rachel.
Sorry, I was just going to check. Presumably the outcome of the review will be a couple of options and their costs and implications for cost to the committee and any staffing costs. Okay, brilliant. Perfect.
So it has had a wage increase then?
No, he hasn't had any wage. No, he's not had no wage increases since he started 3 years ago. But it just appears to us that there could be some savings by changing the way the contract is arranged.
Right. So do we approve the fact that we will review it? And when we have, yes we do, I think, fairly overwhelmingly, we need to work out who and when and how. Shall we hand it back to you, Liz, and you come to us, what, for the next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, smashing.
As long as that's after Christmas, because it's going to take me ages, I think.
So now we move to bins and bike cabinets, 2145.
Pat, could we just deal with that issue about Monty's Loft that we talked about?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. The owner of Monty's Loft asked me last week whether the council would be prepared to help in putting a glass door on the inside of the shop, putting in some heating and making good some holes in the back little nook. And she's saying the cost of the materials would be something like 600 and her husband would put it in for nothing. And I feel that we got it quite cheap when we gave it to them. We were looking at 20,000 to do it up and we didn't spend 20,000. And so I wonder if you would think about that. We can't actually make the decision today because it isn't on the agenda, but I'm wondering if we could show whether we support that idea of spending up to £1,000 on making it warmer and more cost efficient.
Any comments?
Yeah, I thought this was all part of what...
We go through the chair.
Sorry, Judith, then Doug's.
I thought she was, this was all part of what she wanted, and so we gave her 3 months free rental and that she wasn't bothered about heating.
Yeah, you're right.
And the fact that she's talking about putting a glass door on in the inside, that will have to be safety glass 100%.
Yes.
And that won't have to be fitted by any... It will have to be a professional person. Because
I think we're talking about the principle at the moment rather than the detail of what we install, Judith.
I'm just saying that the insurance, you know, if it isn't, then it could be the implications if somebody was to fall or a child was to fall and it was to shatter. I mean, it'd have to be specialised glass. It could cost a lot more than £1,000. Anyhow.
Well, yeah, my first reaction was it was basically leased as seen. They knew that they'd got it at a low price and they knew that it was basically a shell of a toilet. So I was initially of the view when you started speaking that basically they knew what they were getting and it's not an ideal place for a shop, is it? It's got no natural light in it really. And you can see, whilst it might work in the summer, it's going to be a very cold shop to operate in the winter. On the other hand, when they say it's 600 quid and they'll do the work, then that seems to start to become a bit more of a reasonable request. But I don't think they'll put, I can't see they could do it for that price just on costs alone, partly because of what Judith said, because you'd want something on that door that's going to have to be of a decent enough quality to let it out to the next people. And I can't see how they're going to put a heating system in there that's going to be at that price either, unless it's just an electric bar heater, which would cost a fortune. So it feels like that's not a lot of money for an improvement, but I can't see they're going to make a quality improvement that other tenants would want.
Right.
So I'm a bit torn really about the request, if I'm honest.
Thanks, Doug. Tom?
Yeah, with the 3 months free, I think we were going to do that with other tenants who were looking to take it on in the first place. So I think we kind of put that into kind of like encourage them to do some of their own works to the building and to help them along to start with. Considering that we were going to spend thousands on making the unit more usable and to start with, and we haven't done. I think there should be budget available for this. And I think making this more energy efficient would kind of within our climate emergency thing. If the person who's running the top of the shop's going to have a heater on all the time, that's not good for their bills. It's not good for the climate emergency and various things like that. So in principle, I'm in favour of doing something like this to make the shop more usable and better and for the user. And it might just be worth a few concerns about how we're going to do this, which Councillor Roberts and Councillor Carey have correctly raised. So it might be worth a couple of us going down and meeting with, forgotten what she's called, who runs the shop, going down there, just seeing what she plans to do, and just seeing how we can help. We can make this better, and it's something that will go on to future users. Then, yeah, it's good.
Thanks, Tom. Jason?
Yeah, for the landlords, do we have a duty of care to things like this for heating and stuff like that? As you know, a duty of care?
No,
We do. No, I think that the lease was signed in this, you know, knowing what it looked like, and that was the agreement. As Doug said, that was the agreement.
Thank you. Sean, then Mary, then Rachel.
I think
What are the moral issue?
I think Tom's suggestion is a good one about going down to meet them on site. I've been down there before. I'm quite happy to go along with anybody who's up for that.
Mary?
I was going to say, I think the work probably needs doing, you know, as we're moving into winter, but £600 doesn't seem enough, and we need to make sure the quality of the work is such that if they leave and we get another tenant. So yeah, I mean, it's a generous offer on their part, but you know, we need to be careful.
Rachel?
Well, I think there's sort of 3 elements to it, aren't there? One seems to be repairing some plaster or masonry at the back, which I feel, to be honest, we should do. If that's causing drafts into the building, then that feels like something we should fund, because that's the material building that's ours. I think the glass door, I think it's a completely fair point. We need something that could be used by a future tenant, but that said, we don't want to end up spending huge amounts of money on a door, which then if a future tenant comes and they say, well, actually we don't want a door like that because it doesn't work for our business, they just rip it out, because then it's a bit of a wasted investment. So I think the first step for that one is a discussion with the tenant about the sort of thing they have in mind, and then get some quotes for how much those sort of doors cost. I know there's various you know, commercial doors that could be thought about. And they obviously would need to meet the shatterproof standards and all those things and be robust enough. And then I think the third thing about heating, that's a bit more difficult really, because that's an operational running cost of the business. And I think there's a bit of kind of, it was taken as seen. So I suppose my view is we should definitely agree in principle to support the material of the building, which is the plaster masonry stuff. Consider realistically a good medium solution for the door, but in terms of heating, I think that's for them to, that's just one of their running costs.
Okay, would somebody like to propose something? Shall we take Rachel's, what she's just said, as our proposal, that we formally say yes to the repair, we look at the door with a view to doing something about it, and we hand them back the heating bill? Yes? All those in favour? Right. So, Liz, can you sort that?
Yeah.
Thank you. Right, moving on to bins and bike cabinets next to the loo. To consider making a request to Kirklees Council.
Got his hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I'd be happy to go meet with the tenant there as well as Sean, or if anybody else wants to do it.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, perhaps, Tom, do you want to kind of speak to the people who said they were interested and pull them together and fix a time?
Yeah, so there's
Thank
myself, there's Sean. Anybody else interested? Doug's? Yep, that's good. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Do we want
I
Kirklees
believe
Council?
actually, can I just come in? I believe there's a request being made by a member of the public actually to Kirklees for them to be removed as it is, and I think they're looking into that as far as I can understand.
Are you talking about the bins now?
I'm talking about these metal cabinets that's at the side.
Yes.
And
Rachel? Right, Rachel?
Yeah, I was just going to say, because so that everyone's aware, that there's sort of two elements to this. One is the 3 bike bins, or bike, well, they're not really bins, are they? Bike cabinets, which are frequently bashed and serve no real purpose. And I think Councillor Roberts is right. I think in the past, actually, one of our previous councillors tried to pursue this with Kirklees, but I'm not sure that resulted in anything. So I think a formal letter from parish council saying, please, can you remove these? But one thing I'm not quite clear about is whether in the whether they're on our land as part of the public toilets, or whether they're on Kirklees Highways land as part of the car park.
They're on Kirklees.
I think they're probably Kirklees land, in which case I think we need to push them to just remove those. But the other thing, the bin, is not the litter bin near Monty's loft. It's the grey, what I understand is a needle or sharps bin, which is in front of the toilets, and actually is a bit of a, well, clearly, if it was regularly used, and I don't know if it's regularly used, but given it seems to be stuffed with rubbish in the space, that would suggest it's probably not regularly used. And I'm not quite clear. I know we had a discussion about it when we took on the toilets in the first place, and I'm not sure whether there was an ongoing responsibility for Kirklees to look after that bin. So again, whether it sits as part of the toilets or parts of the highway, but it is currently being used as a litter bin, and it's not a litter bin, it's a sharps bin, and it ought to be either managed accordingly and emptied, and we should know who empties it, or it should be gotten rid of.
Thank you. Kath, then Doug's.
Right. Well, I do know that one of our ex-councillors reported those metal cabinets and bins, so Kirklees are dealing with it. Also, the requests were logged with Highways Department on 6th of May. I've had that given today. And the car park bus station will be replaced. Can't read writing. And painted along with painting the rest of the railings as the paint is flaking off. So it looks as if Kirklees are dealing with that area.
Right. That's encouraging. Doug's?
Yeah, I guess a couple of thoughts. My first job actually was organising needle disposal bins for injecting drug users when I was about 20 years old. So they are important. I think the problem is they are rarely used and they're often abused. And so if they're not being looked after properly, somebody needs to take responsibility for it. But the other option is to relocate it, and it could be relocated more opposite the Civic, near where the pharmacy is, because there's probably a lot of the footfall for drug users is going in to local pharmacies and things. So there is other places where it could be put that's perhaps a bit more discreet. The same with those bike cubicles. I've never really seen them used. I don't know if they're ever. Basically, I don't know if cyclists like using them, because they're all over Huddersfield. And some of them used to be used by people who were sleeping on the street more than actually people with bikes. But the other problem is where it is, people reverse into it. So clearly they need to be sorted out and put, if they are useful, then put them somewhere where they can be used and where they won't be damaged. But they're certainly not working where they are. So I'd say rather than, you know, ask for their removal, it's actually, can somebody consider, one, whether these things actually have got a function and can they be put somewhere where they won't get damaged and they're actually used by people who could use them. They could move them onto the council site near Longley's. The council's got a bit of land up there next to the block. That'd be a perfect place to put it. But, you know, so I think what I'd be requesting is they actually review the location and maintenance of both of those facilities.
Thank you. Jason, then Kath again.
Yeah, regarding the grey bin outside the toilet, when we first originally started to take over the toilet, we did request if we could remove the bin. But Kirkley said no, they can't, because it's what it is. It's a drug use bin, and it's drug users know where to go to put the needles, basically. We might run into that problem again if we try and ask them to move it, because their answer were is drug users know where to go to put the empty needles. But regarding the bikes, the bit of history is when we had the Olympics in 2012, the council wanted to sponsor the bike racks and paint them gold for Ed Clancy. But the Kirkley said we couldn't do it because, you know, they own the bags rack. It's nothing to do with the parish council. So I think we need to write to the, as Brooke says, and get them removed to a better site.
Thank you. Kath and Tom.
I'm okay. Doug's covered.
All right. Thank you. Tom?
Before we did think about trying to get rid of the needle bin because we thought it was ugly and didn't really look right with the way it is at the front of the building. But Kirkley's to come back to us, and it actually does get some use as a needle bin. And I would rather, I don't like it, it doesn't look good there, but I would rather have it there than needles getting deposited in the other bins in the toilets somewhere else and somebody having like getting pricked or having a problem with them. So I would rather it be there and for people to use it if they need to do, rather than somewhere else. And with it being by the toilets, it's only have it there because it's people do inject themselves inside the toilets and then they'll go and use the bin there afterwards. So if we were to have the bin somewhere else, they might not do that. So I would rather have the bin there and then have needles lying around and something horrible happen, basically. With the other like metal unit at the side of the building, I don't think it's for bikes. It's more storage, I think. But I don't mind. I got no problem with that going.
Sean, then Mary.
I was just going to mention that people who inject use drugs often use public toilets to do that. So it would seem like the needle sharps bin is in the right place, really, or somewhere around where the loo is. That's Tom's already mentioned that, so it got there to me. Got to it before I did.
Mary.
Well, I just want to say, although Kath said that a former councillor has been in touch with Kirkley's to discuss this, but I can't see anyhow. I'd like to propose that the parish council does get in touch with whoever the responsible Kirkley's officers are and discuss around this issue.
Yeah. What to leave it sort of open and say what can be done, what's achievable, what's right. Rachel.
Sorry, I just wanted to quickly add, it would be useful to understand from Kirkley's the regularity with which the sharps bin is emptied. I think if we've got confidence it is actually being managed and emptied, that's fine. And I think we can advise members of the community accordingly if they question it, because it was Home Pride that raised the question as to what is it and why has it got litter hanging out of it.
Okay, is that clear, Liz?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so we're going to find out from them what they can do and what it's for and how much it's used. Okay, now we move on to grants. Just before we do, I want to ask Rachel a huge favour. I'm struggling here looking at the paperwork and looking at the screen. I wanted, before we move on to considering the grants for next year and the request of declarations of interest, you got a summary, didn't you, from Rich about what we currently have. Could you briefly summarise that for all of us before we move on to considering what we're going to spend or allocate, how much we actually have?
Okay, it's quite a it's quite a complicated explanation, really.
It is, isn't it?
which I think would I mean, just for the benefit of other councillors, when I was looking at the papers earlier, I sent a question to Rich to say, well, actually, how much do we have left in the CASC budget? Because my understanding previously was that we'd spent it all, actually, all the grant bits anyway. And I was conscious that the committee is moving on to thinking about its budget for next year, and therefore it's useful. Now we've got these expressions of interest to understand, well, if we were minded to look to support those next year, what would that mean for the budget? So so Rich sent me a 3-page document late this afternoon, which I think probably would be helpful for everyone to see, to be fair. But what the
do you want me to put it up, Rachel, on the screen?
Yeah, you could do. Yeah, because I think it's fairly important if you can do that. Yeah.
I think the most accessible one is the one that's 2 pages, which is the summary.
The email from Rich himself. Yeah.
All right, I'll see what I can find.
The RFO report for budget is
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll start talking to it anyway. But
okay.
Basically, because CASC had this year's budget with £66,000, of which 15,000 was for Honley Library, 15,000 for Civic Hall, 15,000 for other community assets, and then we had 16,000 for toilets day to day and 5,000 for toilets lettable space. But we had this whole thing of underspending last year, and what happens when a budget isn't spent in a year, it doesn't then roll over into the next year for that committee. It just goes into general reserves. So that's when we had I think it was circa £9,000, which wasn't spent in CASC because of COVID and the delays in agreeing grants, which then meant that £9,000 went into this year's budget. Yeah, Liz, that's the difficult one to look at, to be honest.
All right, okay, get rid of that one.
You can open one that says RFO report.
Yeah.
Then it provides the explanation. So yeah, perfect. So if you scroll down a little bit, so what Rich is saying is the amended budget was effectively £75,000 because of that 9k. So we ended up having £24,000 in our other community projects. And then if you scroll down a tiny bit more, we've got obviously we've touched on some of those things today. So at the top of page 2, it says money remaining in the CASC budget at the end of September. Effectively, if you look at that, we've got no money for community projects, but we have got quite a lot of money left for Civic Hall projects, and obviously the 15,000 per year that we were expecting Honley Library to require, alongside quite a lot of public toilets day-to-day costs. So Rich has provided a useful summary here that says the public toilets cost around £1,500 a month to run, so it's likely you'll have a surplus of about 3k at the year end. And he's saying the other budgets are likely to be fairly static. Not sure about Honley Library, but it seems sensible for the 15k to be carried over. Now, the Community Trust hasn't asked for additional money for capital projects, but obviously we heard from Judith today that, that there may be a few projects that they might look for funding within this financial year. So I think we need to be aware of that. And similarly, the lettable space, well, we've just been talking about a potential door and the masonry repairs, so that could be another 1,000, bit more, 2,000 perhaps. So if we scroll down a bit further, what Rich has said we could do for the next year's budget is effectively we've still got money in the reserves for Civic Hall projects, so it's not saying we're not giving the Civic Hall any support, because we've already got money in there, I think to the tune of £30,000 waiting for them as and when required. But we could reduce that and move that money into the community projects line. Because effectively, I think the message is that the money is there for CASC. How we divvy that up is up to the committee, but obviously the budget lines are indicative of what we had in mind when we set the budget. But what he also has commented is that there'll be quite a considerable amount of accumulated general reserves at the year end, and that's because things that roll over at the end of a year that are unspent just end up in general reserves. And I think that's what he's outlined at the end, which is basically saying, in summary, I think, is that we don't, if we're minded to support the various applications that we have in front of us, that doesn't necessarily require us to ask for the precept to be raised. So there isn't an automatic assumption, which I think could have been made from the original budget figures, that if we wanted to spend more than 15,000 on other assets, we would automatically have to look to ask for full council to consider increasing the precept. I think what it's saying is actually there's quite a lot of money available, which we could draw on should we so wish to do.
Thank you ever so much.
Can I ask Rachel, this climate emergency, I'm presuming that's not coming out of the CASC budget, but it's coming out of the budget per se belonging to the parish council, is that then? I thought they were going to be self-funding the climate emergency along with the other group that's going to be taking on somebody as well. Now then, what do they call this? I can't just think now. It'll come to me.
The council agreed £46,000 for the climate emergency. It's not self-funding at all.
You what? Sorry?
The full council approved that we give the climate emergency committee £46,000.
But where's it coming from?
It's coming from council funds. It's been agreed by full council. This is not the place for this discussion. It's not a CASC issue.
Well, that's just that's the only thing I've asked. I've just asked: is it a CASC issue, or is it coming from another budget? That's all.
No, it's coming from council in general.
Goodness gracious me! I only asked a perfectly civil question there.
I think sorry, if I can just add, I think the bit at the bottom of that report that's on the screen, if you could scroll back down again, is just commenting that there are other elements of the council budget which are currently underspent. Now they all sit in other committees, which we have no sort of jurisdiction as CASC committee, and clearly in that it says climate emergency has 42,000 left, which might be what prompted Councillor Roberts' question, but that's not for us to say that, oh well, we can just take all the money from all those different committees, but it's more just being aware that there are, as a council, we haven't completely committed all our funds for this financial year. So if we were in a position where we wish to recommend spending more money, there are opportunities to do so.
Can I just say, I think that last paragraph is a bit misleading, because we will have spent 24,000 on the minibus by the end of the year, give or take a couple of thousand, and I would think the climate emergency probably is underspent. But you can't look at those figures and think that that might be available, because what he hasn't done there is take off the projected spend. I mean, you could have the 5,000 for the CCTV, because that's just an amount that's put aside to mend the CCTV, so we never use it. But you can't say the same for the climate emergency money. You know, that obviously will be spent largely. So,
right.
So I don't think it's helpful to look at those particular numbers, but I think the principle is for CASC to set a budget that is higher than what it currently has, without it automatically having an impact on the precept level.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Rachel. So if you can take that down, Liz, I can get back to my agenda. We need to look at the applications now, don't we? Or rather, the expressions of interest. Tom?
I'm just going to say, Liz, I think Doug's is in the waiting room trying to come back in.
Oh, I wondered it said Anne Foster, so I didn't want to let him in.
That's his partner, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I can't seem to get back to my full picture now, so I don't know how to get rid of the screen. Okay.
I really need you to get rid of the screen because it's hiding my agenda.
Same.
And it's 8:45 now.
Well, we have several expressions of interest. We don't have to have detailed discussions. Are we having any luck getting rid of this screen, Liz?
No.
What we have to discuss is expressions of interest which we can approve in principle without going through every nut and bolt of what is being asked for. And now that we know what we've got to spend, Liz and Kath and I with Rachel went through these expressions of interest about a week ago. Our feeling, just before you look at them, and you've all had the papers, you've got them there in this huge agenda thing. Our feeling was that by and large, and not as a complete writ in stone rule, we wanted to restrict all the applications to in the region of £1,000 unless there was a very good argument for giving more. So give more people a bit less. And that our guiding principle when it came to, well, which bit of, they asked, you know, several of them have asked for have a big long shopping list. And in deciding which bits we would give them the money towards, we decided that it should be on sustainability and climate stuff. That, you know, if we are left with a choice, that can help us decide. So that being the case, do we want to go through each one individually? Rachel, and then Mary.
I was just going to say, yeah, I didn't think we said that we'd limit it to 1,000. I thought we said up to 5,000.
You're right. You're right. I'm misremembering.
I'm not. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm conscious of time. I'm not sure that it's necessarily helpful to go through each one in detail, given that because what these are at the moment is just purely expressions of interest. They're not formal applications to ask for the money, but they're things that we need to bear in mind for setting next year's budget. And I'm also conscious one or two of them have ended up being picked up through other routes. I'm trying to think which one it is. Oh, it was the Big Growers, for example, was F&M, and the Honley Cricket Club. We also saw that at F&M, and I think we gave them a token gesture, but no more than that. We gave them £250 or something like that. So I think some of it may need slightly updating in light of other committee decisions. But I suppose the principle is what the summary was at the bottom, which is we've had in the region of, what was it, potentially nearly £35,000 worth of ask from community assets. So I think that's kind of the main point. And also I was conscious we need to pick up Brockhole's grant application, which is separate to this because it's a grant.
Yes. Yeah.
We've got some extra ones, haven't we? We've got Waldale Community Centre making their garden into their disused land into a garden. That wasn't one that we discussed before. And also we've just had in the Cartworth Moor Cricket Club expression of interest, and I think really the easy option is saying they're looking for £2,000 to renew their veranda, but they've got lots of other updating things. So we haven't actually looked at all of them yet either.
I'm aware of time and that we clearly can't go through all of them. What do people want to do now? What do you want the meeting to do? Rachel?
Sorry, what I was going to suggest, in light of the fact that we've sort of highlighted the budget implications, I wonder if it would be helpful for Liz to revise or update the list to add figures, and I agree £2,000 for Cartworth sounds sensible, and basically have a new table that includes the ones that we're minded to potentially support up to a maximum of £5,000, and that then gives us a figure which can then go back to Rich to say, in practice, could this be achieved, or what would be the implications if we wish to support community assets to this tune, and what would it mean for the budget, so that we're all looking at So we've all got the information in front of us of actually, would this necessitate other elements of the council to reduce their demands for us to then keep the precept at the same level, so that we understand what the options are? Because then it might be a case that we say, actually, £5,000 for one organisation may be too much, given we've had all these interests, and we want to reduce it to 3. But I feel at the minute we're a little bit blind to all the implications of agreeing the principles.
Right. Okay. Doug?
Sorry, Chair. Can you hear me? Am I muted? Yeah. You
No,
can.
no.
Right, so I've had to go onto my phone because the computer died. Anyway, and then I couldn't get on because I was in the waiting room.
Sorry, I didn't let you on, Doug, because I didn't recognise your name. I didn't know who it was, so I didn't let you in. Sorry.
Because I'm signed in on my phone as Anne Foster. Yeah, so sorry about that. Anyway, my point is, yeah, I do think it's 10 to 9. It's far too complicated. I think there's far too much demand, so we're going to have to be a lot tighter, really, on our criteria. And I do think there's a very serious conversation to be had about supporting schools, because if one school's going to say that they think that, you know, in theory we can fund them, you're opening an absolute massive door that all the other schools will all come in for their community projects in their gardens. So I think we can't rush this type of discussion. We need to have a serious discussion about priorities. There's clearly not enough money there to begin to support even a fraction of what's now in the pipeline. So we need to do some sums, we need to go away, need to look at criteria, and need to revisit this at a second meeting. Even if it's a one-off meeting about grants and the way forward with grants, I'd support that.
I agree. I think what we need is a meeting that only has grants and expressions of interest on the agenda, to be honest, so that we can sit down, go through it and bottom it and find and, you know, and for us to have that summary that Rachel just described as our tool to run that meeting, and then we can read it.
Yeah.
Is everybody happy with that? Hands up. Yeah. Okay. We have to note, and that will feed into the budget planning, because we clearly can't do. We need to. That is part of the. That is the budget planning. We need to note Tonebridge Cricket Club saying thank you. Please note. And I'm very sorry we've overrun. But
Can I just sorry, Pat, before you finish, I did have Brockhall School down as a grant application because they put it up properly. So shall we just say that we're deferring it to our discussion about grants in general? Yeah,
I think so. I think so. Tom, sorry, you wanted to speak.
Yeah, Liz covered it. I was going to talk about the Brockhall School, but yeah, thanks.
Is there anything else anybody else wants to raise before I close the meeting? Thank you all for your patience. Good night.
Yes, Pat, well done.
Well done.
Thanks, Pat. Well done.
Thank you, Pat.